Hello, and welcome back to True Crime Guys Podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
Oh, baby, how's everybody doing? You ready for the cool air, the fall?
Yeah,
Hunting
season. That's right. Get back out
I
in
feel
the
like
woods.
I feel like it's becoming a tradition. We do every year when fall hits and hunting season hits, we do a hunting-based episode.
Yeah, we do a human hunter.
Yeah, where unfortunately hunters get hunted by another human.
Yes. And this is no hunting accident either. Hope this doesn't up your paranoia for hunting season, guys.
Right. Be careful when you're out there. You might be being stalked yourself.
Who knows? All these gentlemen thought that they were out enjoying a nice day fishing or walking a field, scoping out where they were going to hunt. They became prey.
That's right.
Insane, man.
Yeah, so if that doesn't get you ready for this episode enough, I don't know what will.
Seriously, what else do we have to say?
Nothing. Get into the intro. Let's do this.
Here's another crazy story about this sumbitch we're talking about this week. We like to hunt people. Out there in goddamn Ohio. One time the investigator asked him, he said, "You want to see the autopsy pictures?" Dylan said, "Yeah, I want to see them all. Show them to me." Investigator said, "All right." Dylan said, "I never saw them in color. What the hell?" Investigator said, "We'll show you some pictures." Dylan began flipping through the pictures. He said, "Not the neatest job in the world, was it?" The investigator sat there for a minute looking at him, puzzled. He said, "The shooting?" And, "No, it's not." Dylan interrupted him. He said, "No. I meant this autopsy. Jeez, it's a dirty job, I tell you." Yeah, he's a piece of shit. Buckle up. Here we go. Okay, Google, what does the expression "mailing it in" mean?
According to your dictionary, to deliver a performance without commitment or effort, with lackluster results.
Yep. Nailed it.
All right, for our case this week, we're going back to rural Ohio in the 1980s. Yeah, as somebody who grew up in Las Vegas and was lived in a valley and surrounded by mountains, if you've ever been to Vegas or lived here, like, I don't know, as someone who grew up here, it just weirds me out when I go to flat places. I'm just like, where's the fucking mountains? I feel very exposed right now.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, when it's flat all the way. Because the valley's flat, but you're right. Every direction you look in Vegas, there's mountains.
Yes.
And around Vegas. Yeah, everywhere is just a bowl. It's like you go from this valley to that valley.
Yep.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
The rural counties of southern Ohio are hilly, rocky, and wide open, and in the late 1980s, it was a place where people could leave their doors unlocked and violent crime was almost unheard of. Until a certain person came of age and
Yes, he did.
started killing random people for the fun of it. On April 1st, 1989, 35-year-old Donald Welling did what he usually did on Saturdays. He went jogging along the back roads of Tuscarawas County. This time was different, however. While jogging, he was shot through the heart with a high-powered rifle. No evidence was found, and the gun was never recovered. Local authorities could not find a motive or any evidence to help them solve this murder, and it went cold. That was a kind of a MO for this killer here, where he was just doing murder in a way that was damn near impossible to catch. You know, he would always pick up his shell casings. It was always random. It was always in rural areas with no witnesses. And in the 1980s, it was already, a little bit more difficult than now to catch him because there was little to no surveillance cameras or anything like that anywhere.
Right.
So how are you going to catch this person?
Yeah, it was terrifying. It was a nightmare. Yeah. Literally, nobody wanted to be out alone.
And also, every murder was committed in a different county within southern Ohio. So you're also dealing with jurisdiction, lack of communication between jurisdictions.
Right.
So 1 year, over a year and a half later, 19 months later, on November 10th, 1990, 21-year-old Jamie Paxton, a steel worker, awoke just before dawn. It was a frosty Saturday morning, but Jamie had plans outdoors that day. Ohio's annual bow hunting season was in full swing, and he was not going to miss the opportunity to bag a deer on that weekend. So he lived with his parents in a cozy white frame house in Bannock County, Ohio. And following breakfast just before 7 o'clock, he headed out the door with his crossbow. So he's going to go hunting for deer with a crossbow.
Yeah, because they opened crossbow season earlier in Ohio. I mean, I'm sure most places.
Yeah,
But that
typically
was the
bow
case
season
here.
in general is earlier than rifle season.
Right. And that was the case here. It was no rifles allowed at this point. That's why they knew that this was someone had ill intent in this crime right
Right.
away.
So when he got to his location where he was going to start stalking deer, he left his crossbow in the car as he walked through some tall grass unarmed. He didn't notice that a red pickup truck had pulled up a close distance away. While walking through this field on this beautiful morning, he was shot 3 times by a high-powered rifle in his chest, his right knee, and his buttocks. There were no witnesses. This murder was in a different county as the first one, at Belmont County, and it rocked the community. Hunting accidents happened every now and then, but this was clearly no accident. You know, like you said, this wasn't even rifle season, and
Right.
a rifle accident is typically one shot. And
One
it's not
shot.
3 shots.
Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
accidentally shoot a human 3 times
Right.
in an open field.
Yeah. Sheriff Tom McCord had almost nothing to work with. No shell casings or tire prints, not even bullets themselves were recovered. So these were apparently through and through wounds from a high-powered rifle, and they weren't even able to recover the bullets themselves from the body. And after interviewing Jamie Paxton's family members and friends, they were unable to find any motive for the murder. Everyone knew him, liked him, and they were just shocked. Like no one would want to kill Jamie. He was a good guy. Everybody
Right.
liked him.
He was just getting started. He was only 21 years old.
Yeah. But like we've
Heartbreaking.
seen in the past, the victim's mother, Jean Paxton, was compelled
Thank
to
God.
action. So many times mothers crack cases in the cases we do, man, where they just will not give up.
Right? It's mother's love, bro. It's mother's love. And again, he was living at home with his parents. You know what I mean? They were still living every day with him.
Yep. Yeah, his mother had made him breakfast that morning before he went off to hunt.
Right. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So Jean Paxton began sending letters to a local newspaper, the Margin Ferry Times Leader. We have some quotes from these letters that she would write, trying to get a response from the killer. She just wanted, she was trying to lure him out of darkness. She says, every time I would sit down to write a letter, I would say a prayer. I would say, please, God, give me the right words to say to find the killer of my son. So in one of the letters, we have a quote. She says, to the murderer of my son, Jamie, would it be easier if I wrote words of hate? I can't because I don't feel hate. I feel deep sorrow for losing my son. You took a light from my life last November and left me with many days of darkness. Have you ever thought of your own death? It'll happen unless you confess your sin and ask for God's forgiveness. You will face the fire and fury of hell at your own death. Also, in
Damn.
one of the letters, she wrote to the person that they had Jamie's blood on their hands, and no matter how many times they washed their hands, Jamie's blood would still be there. Quote, how can you touch members of your family with the hands that have killed? Powerful words from a mother. And
Yes,
the newspaper,
very
credit
powerful.
to them, would continue to publish this and try to lure this killer out.
Right. Yeah, she's really trying to incite him. And what we know most killers are narcissistic. And this stuff got to him a little
yeah.
bit. It
Yeah.
got to him. That shit
Got to him
planted
'cause he
because
would eventually write back and crack this case. It would take a while, but
right. But his murder of Jamie Paxton was one that stuck with him more than the
Yes.
others. And you have to wonder why. And it's got to be
the mother.
the fact that his mother got involved and made it personal.
Yep.
He's seen the consequences of the lives torn apart from this senseless act that he feels like he has to do for the first time. I mean, it doesn't stop him, but it sticks
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah. However, initially, as she was writing and these letters were published in the newspaper, it seemed as though the killer, if reading Jean's letters, seemed to have no effect on him. Just 18 days after Jamie's murder, the killer struck again. On November 28th, 1990, 30-year-old Kevin Loring from Duxbury, Massachusetts, was deer hunting in Muskingum County, about 40 miles from where Jamie was killed. Kevin was with some friends that day, which made it a little bit different than the 2 prior killings where they were solo, they were alone, it was kind of easy
Right.
pickings. Kevin had a group of friends that he was hunting with, but after they all sat down for lunch, he finished first and decided to get a head start on them. And while walking across the field alone, he became prey. He was killed by a single gunshot wound to the face from a high-powered rifle. All three murders at this point had been committed in different counties, making it more difficult for a connection for the murders to be made between the county's officials. Police and Kevin Loring's murder decided that it was probably a hunting accident, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Same type of murder?
Well, once again, they're different counties, and they were unaware of the other two murders. It's just amazing to me though, because
well,
I don't know. This is all Southern Ohio. These counties they've got to be fairly close. Obviously, this dude's hunting. And a lot of times we talked about the first two murders were 40 miles apart. So I was like, how are they not getting reports of something like this happening? But then again,
because they're not working
assuming
together.
They're accidents.
We know that. You know that. Police. City police don't work together very well, much less county police. And you got to think how far these are spread out, especially the downtown police department areas of these concentrated counties. You know what I mean? They're very spread out. And this is also evidence early that Thomas Dillon, he must know something about serial killers, right? He must be looking into serial killers in some way, shape, or form in order to know that he needs to drive around to all these different counties. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just drive around in places you know? You know what I'm saying? It seems like he's gotten a little smarter, like he's done a little research as far as this spreading these murders out like this. And he did one shot. He was probably more careful, and he took this guy out in one shot so it could look like a hunting accident. Because I'm sure in the second murder that was reported, where he shot the guy 3 times, I'm sure it was reported that this was obviously not an accident. And he was like, "Ooh, well, that doesn't look good."
Yeah, well,
see what I'm saying? So
I don't know if he cared much about that, because I think he assumed he was never going to be caught as long as he picked up his shell casings and there was no witnesses of him actually, his truck or something like that. But as far as like why he shot the dude in the head one shot, I think he was trying to shoot Jamie and kill him with one shot as well. He just kept missing. I think he was basically using these dudes as like target practice. This is something that once we find out who this killer is and we learn more about him, that he just used all kinds of life as target practice, as well as all sorts of different pieces of property.
Street signs,
he was just always
and
driving
whatnot.
Around shooting at everything just for fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's
I don't
almost
know
like
if
a
it was
kid
as much
with a BB
calculated
gun.
to not get caught as it was just he was just aiming for the head for fun type of thing. It sounds sick, but I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I agree. He's a kid with a BB gun, man.
Yeah,
He had like no
that never
impulse
grew up.
control. Yeah.
Yeah, so the police, as we mentioned, in Kevin Loring's murder, decided that it was probably a hunting accident, and for a while that was that. Meanwhile, Jean Paxton was still writing to the killer. She was published frequently in the newspaper even into 1991, nearly a year after her son's murder. Finally, she got what she wanted, a response from the killer. He wrote back using a typewriter. The letter arrived at the Martin Ferry Times-Leader a few days before the one-year anniversary of Jamie's death. Quote, "I killed Jamie Paxton. I did not know him. I had not ever seen him before in my life, and he never said a word to me on that Saturday." Quote, "Paxton was killed because of an irresistible compulsion that had taken over my life to turn into a merciless killer with no conscience. I know when I left my house that day that someone would die by my hand. I thought no more of shooting Paxton than shooting a bottle at the dump. I'm an average-looking person with a family, a job, and a home. I was very drunk, and a voice inside my head said, 'Do it.' I stopped my car behind Jamie's and got out. Jamie started walking very slowly down the hill toward the road. He appeared to be looking past me at something in the distance. I raised my rifle to my shoulder and lined him up in the sights. It took at least 5 seconds to take careful aim. My first shot was off a little bit and hit him in the right chest. He groaned and went down. I wanted to make sure he was finished, so I fired a second shot, aimed half between his hip and shoulder. He was crawling on the ground. I jerked the shot and hit him in the knee. He raised again and groaned. My third shot also missed and hit him in the butt. He never moved again." Quote, 5 minutes after I shot Paxton, I was drinking a beer and had blocked all thoughts out of what I had just done in my mind. I thought no more of shooting Paxton than shooting a bottle at the dump, like he'd already said. I know you hate my guts, and rightfully so. I think about Jamie every hour of the day, and as I'm sure you do. Quote, "Don't feel bad about not solving the case. You could interview till doomsday everyone that Jamie Paxton ever met in his life, and you wouldn't have a clue to my identity. With no motive, no weapon, and no witnesses, you could not possibly solve this crime." And the letter was signed, "The Murderer of Jamie Paxton."
You know what's funny? That he says, "I think no more about shooting Paxton than shooting a bottle at the dump." And then his next sentence is, "I think about Jamie every hour of the day."
Seriously. Yeah, there's a
So
bit of
which is
contradiction there, isn't there?
So which is it?
Yeah. And once again, I think she humanized this person that he had dehumanized by shooting a random guy just walking through a field. The mother sending letters and talking about her son and not being combative, not saying, I'm
Right.
going to find you and we're going to kill you, or we're going to, lock you away forever. She was saying, I'm just so sorrowful for my son. And how can you do this? How can you like live with yourself type of thing? Just guilting him.
Yep.
May have humanized this person that he had shot, and made it to where, he's now thinking about it and maybe a little bit of regret. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like he did. I feel like this murder in particular, and it's because of
Yeah.
Jamie's mom, no doubt.
So the Belmont County Sheriff's Office now had its first lead. Jean Paxton's love for her son and her antipathy for his killer had exposed the serial killer that the authorities had no idea even existed. And when he struck again, the pieces began to fall into place. On Saturday, March 14th, 1992, 49-year-old Claude Hawkins decided to go for some early morning fishing after finishing up his midnight shift at the Pittsburgh Plate and Glass Company. Married and a father of four, Hawkins loved fishing and had a favorite spot just below Wills Creek Dam, northwest of Belmont, Ohio, in Coshocton County.
Coshocton. Nailed it.
Coshocton, yeah.
Coshocton.
So he goes fishing that morning, and he was found dead a short while later, shot in the back at close range. Since the Hawkins murder occurred on federal land, that was a big mistake by
Yes,
the
it
killer.
was.
The FBI would be called in, and they would start connecting the pieces that these different jurisdictions hadn't done yet, and realize that they had a serial killer who was randomly killing people out in rural areas. Special Agent Harry Trombitis from the Columbus Field Office was one of the officers assigned to the case. He says, quote, "Usually you would find some type of shell casing in the area. I remember looking very hard, metal detectors, hands on knees for any shell casings in that. None were ever found. And so there was something, if in fact we had somebody who was evidence conscious enough to pick up the shell casing after they had shot and killed somebody. We were dealing with a different brand of person here." So the FBI was convinced that the Hawkins murder was not a solitary event, just because they were so cautious as to leave no evidence behind. This
Exactly.
couldn't have been someone this was their first murder.
And they knew that the murder was attempted at close range.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they knew they had a very small place to be searching, and they
Yep.
still were unable to find anything. So they're like, yeah, this guy is smarter. This is not his first offense at all.
Yeah. So on March 26, 1992, in New Philadelphia, just south of Canton, officers from 4 counties, the Ohio Division of Wildlife, and the FBI gathered to compare notes. As the meeting progressed, the assembled officers discovered that the earliest of possible related homicides occurred on April 1st, 1989. That was the first murder that we covered. Jogger
Yes.
Donald Welling, the guy that was just out jogging on a rural road and was
Yep.
shot apparently from a vehicle. Jamie Paxton's murder was also brought up, and a link seemed apparent. Investigators concluded that the killer had been inactive for 19 months before Paxton's murder in Belmont. They also discovered that 18 days after Jamie's murder on November 28, 1990, there had been another murder in Duxbury, that of Kevin Loring. So the murder of Loring had been deemed a hunting accident, but there was little question now as to what had actually happened. It did not take long for investigators to realize that a serial killer was roaming the back roads of southern Ohio. So now they're finally connecting the pieces and realize now the hunt can actually begin. He was just getting away with, just going around doing whatever he wanted, and they were being ruled accidents or just random attacks that wouldn't occur again.
Right.
And
Right.
now the hunt is on. On the morning of April 5th, 1992, 10 days after the New Philadelphia meeting, another outdoorsman was found dead, though. Gary Bradley, a 44-year-old steel worker with a wife and 3 children from Williamstown, West Virginia, had been shot in the back while fishing in Noble County, adjacent to Belmont County. The serial killer had apparently struck again. In early May, 5-county federal and local investigative task force was established. So, as we noticed with so many serial killer cases we cover, they end up forming a task force, which is quite necessary oftentimes.
Absolutely. 'Cause you have to cover the escape that the serial killer is traveling, and this guy's
You need to
all
put your
over the
heads
place.
together and really get a game plan to catch someone like this.
Right. You know what?
You need to start scoping out rural roads and like really get a bunch of surveillance going and follow
Yeah.
every lead.
I'm sure that this was considered in their research and investigation of this case, but in the documentary I watched, they never talked about how all of the killings were in a close proximity to a road. It's not like this guy was hunting people. He wasn't going out into
No,
the
he was
woods.
just pulling up
They were
and
all
then
close-
aiming at them
Yeah.
from there. Yeah.
I feel like that helped in a way. I think having everything in close proximity to the road because, yeah, like you said, it's after the shot, he had to immediately get in the car, drive away. And then sometimes he would dispose of the gun or immediately go and, trade the gun as well. But yeah, I never seen any mention of that. They act like, oh, there's all this land. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. It's got to be in eyesight of the road. You know what I mean?
Right.
All of these murders, even the fishing murders, he pulled up alongside the bank on a back road, shot him through the woods. Why they just, from what it looked like to me, where I saw the overhead shots on Google and whatnot, it looked like people could just walk down the embankment right down to the river and they were fishing there or the lake, whatever.
Yeah. It makes
So-
me wonder on the Kevin Loring murder.
Yeah.
He was the one where he was with friends and they were eating lunch. It's like I have a feeling the killer didn't know he was with a group of friends. He was driving down the road and saw Kevin come out into this field
Exactly.
alone and assumed that he had no friends. That he could have easily gotten spotted on that one. He could have left several witnesses on that one.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree. The same thing. They were probably eating lunch somewhere in the shade. You know what I'm saying? And before they got started, he took off across the field to go get his position, and he thought he was by himself. Absolutely. Yeah. If anybody approached him or even looked in his direction, I think he doesn't take the shot. I feel like he's that type of killer. If anybody
Right.
even notices him or acknowledges his existence, he's not killing him. He's like that sleazy type of person. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. There was one where he said that the victim had looked at him and said, "What's up?" and then he shot him.
Really?
But I think he mentioned that I think we'll get some more quotes from the killer as he continues to write to newspapers.
Okay.
And it seemed as though it maybe bothered him a little bit more that the dude seemed nice and was like just saying, "Hey, what's up?" You know?
Exactly. It humanized that person. It's not just
Yes,
prey from far away.
Which is part of our survival kit to surviving an encounter with a serial killer, right? Humanize yourself.
Humanize it.
Communicate with
Yep.
them and like make them not just another faceless victim for their notch on their belt, you know?
Exactly. Good advice.
Yeah, so the police create this task force, and they would meet at the FBI office in Columbus, where officers from each of the 5 counties presented details of their cases. This so-called Hannibal Lecter Squad, a group of 3 personality profiles from the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit in Quantico, Virginia, formed a profile of the killer, concluding that he was a white male over the age of 30, a gun enthusiast, avid hunter, and owned at least several weapons. The killer would have been above average intelligence, but was introverted without many friends, and would resolve personal problems in a cowardly fashion. He might have a drinking problem and engage in obscene telephone calls, arson, fire, and vandalism by shooting out windows of tires or tires of vehicles. He would likely take sadistic delight in mutilating and killing animals of all sorts. Stressful events would trigger his criminal episodes, which would usually be committed while he was drunk. The killer profiler said he, quote, lived within easy distance of the slayings. Whoever killed the outdoorsman, quote, did it for his own pleasure, his own satisfaction and pleasure, said Dr. Emmanuel Tenay, a professor of psychiatry at Wayne State University in Detroit. Quote, if it's pleasurable to kill dogs and cats at random, the much better prey is humans. They're a bigger trophy. People enjoy killing, let's face it. That's why they do it. So by midsummer, the task force had investigated and ruled out at least 100 possible suspects, but they were not much closer to finding the killer. I think it's important real quick after we find out much more about the killer, how damn accurate this FBI profile was yet again. And it's
Dude,
almost like
they
you're like, dude,
typically are.
is this real? Like, did they make this afterwards after catching the killer? Sometimes I'm like, there's no way they were this fucking accurate because like that's literally a perfect description of the person that we're doing in this episode.
I know. And we see this often. But it is hard to tell.
Yeah.
It's like because they don't release any of the information until after the case. So
I
it's
know,
like,
right?
did you have it? You just want to seem really smart. Yeah, I get it. But some of this stuff ain't a stretch. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that's true.
vandalism.
I mean, it's what
that-
we had in our minds so far, right? Like if you had
Yeah.
like a mental image of what this killer's going to be like, it was pretty much what they described.
Right. Killing animals, being sadistic towards animals. Yeah. All that shit lines up. Even arson. You know what I'm
White
saying?
dude with beers driving around drunk in a pickup truck shooting at shit.
Right. Exactly. That's pretty easy shit right there. But the fact that where it said that he would resolve personal problems in a cowardly fashion, now that's interesting.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because you would think somebody who's like,
Well,
all
it's a
about
cowardly
vandalism
it's
and-
a cowardly crime that he's committing. You know, he's
True,
just shooting
true.
randomly at people from a distance. There's no confrontation involved.
right. I just think that's an interesting thing to include in this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It makes you wonder what would have happened if one of these people had spotted him and from a distance pointing a gun at them, if they would have confronted him like, "Hey, what the fuck
Yeah.
are you doing?" You know, like would he have
Yeah.
still shot them or would he have like cowardly got back in his truck and drove off or something?
Didn't that happen? He got spotted one time by two guys. And
Did he?
he got spotted by two guys that he was going to kill, like close to where he same scenario as the other guys that were fishing, but these guys were like walking in the woods along a lake, but they were hunting, and they turn around and he's pointing the gun at them.
Jesus.
Yeah,
So he probably learned a lesson there to not target multiple people at once.
right. I don't know, the way the documentary portrayed it, it was almost like he was trying to line them up with one bullet.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then they turned, and then the other guy came out from behind the other guy. You see what I'm saying? Maybe he didn't even see that there were two people.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And then the other guy stood up, and he was like, "Oh shit, there's two people here."
Yep.
And that may have been what scared him off, because there was the scenario like you brought up earlier where the guy did approach him, but it was just one guy, so you can silence him real quick. But when there's two, you know,
And also, that guy didn't come at him with a combative tone. It was, "What's up?"
exactly. So he was unsuspecting still. He wasn't on his guard.
Yeah. So on July 30th, 1992, which would have been Jamie Paxton's 23rd birthday, his mother, Jean, sent another letter to the newspaper. She described how she baked her son's favorite cake that day, quote, "but Jamie wasn't there to enjoy it. There's a small child in our family whose biggest worry was who's going to blow out the candles on Jamie's cake. The next time there's a birthday party in your family, I hope you think of the cake on our table and know that the reason Jamie wasn't here to blow out, you're the reason Jamie wasn't there to blow out the candles." Gee, she's really like pulling at the heartstrings.
Let him have it.
Yeah. In August, investigators concluded that the killer was not going to risk sending another letter himself and decided to go public. In a press release to the media, they explained that they suspected a serial killer was hunting outdoorsmen in a loose cluster in eastern Ohio counties. The headline of the Saturday, August 22nd edition of the Plain Dealer said, quote, "Slayings linked in rural Ohio." The article stated that 5 sportsmen had been murdered, and investigators suspected a single serial sniper in their deaths. The paper also included a copy of the FBI's suspect profile. And this FBI profile they created that we said was deadly accurate comes up with an informant because, basically this thing was so accurate that they put out in the newspaper. Someone that knew the killer was like, I know that motherfucker.
Yeah, I know exactly
this
who
guy.
that is.
Yep.
Thank God they did this because they debated going live with all this information.
Right.
Because
well, I'm sure
had
they still kept
zero
quite a
leads.
few details close to the vest,
Right. Yeah, probably.
So an informant comes forward on August 26, 1992. Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Detective Sergeant Walter Wilson got a call from 43-year-old Richard Fry. Apparently, Fry had read the August 11, 1992 report in the newspaper, and he says, quote, "I'd like to meet with you. I saw the reports about the task force that had been formed to solve the killings, and I just think I got the guy who should be investigated as a possible suspect." The man, Fry, was nervous about coming into the station, so Detective Wilson agreed to meet with him at a private location outside of town that day. During their meeting, Fry explained that Wilson that the profile sounded a lot like an old high school buddy of his, a guy named Tom Dillon. An employee of the Canton Water Department in the 1970s, Fry said he and Dillon often drove around eastern Ohio together, drinking beer, shooting road signs, and committing minor acts of arson. Fry recounted
Really?
What were you going to
I said, "Oh, really?"
say? Yeah, right.
Sorry, you're under arrest. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. So you're the guy. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, seriously.
Fry recounted his conversation to David Knox and 2 other Akron Beacon Journal reporters. Quote, "Back in the year we graduated, we were having a problem with some other kids at high school. One of these standoffs, you throw something at my car, I throw something at your car, but nobody ever throws a punch. One night, one of the other guys kicked his car. Tom pulled out his gun and took a shot at the guy. I asked him this, quote, 'Did you really mean to hit him?' And he said, 'Yes, I meant to hit him.' I used to go out hunting with him because we were gun enthusiasts. In the beginning, it was all pretty legitimate, but then we started hitting these dumps in southern Stark County. We'd go down there hunting rats and things. I remember we ran into a couple of scraggly dogs one time. They were all diseased. They were sick. I remember they had open sores. Tom said, 'Do you think I should kill them?' And I said, 'Well, you'd probably be doing them a favor.' I remember him shooting them. I didn't think too much about it. Wild dogs can be vicious. Then he started shooting dogs, just dogs along the road. I said, 'Tom, shooting a wild dog is one thing, but that dog doesn't look very wild to me.' He said, 'You can't let them damn things be running around.' I let it go by once or twice. Then I said, 'Tom, you got to quit it or I won't go out with you. These are somebody's pets. Somebody loves them. It's not right to do that.'" So it sounds like the guy. Doesn't
Yeah,
it?
this definitely sounds like the guy. Also, they used to discuss serial killers, so that
Yeah.
could be a red flag as well, right?
Yeah. Fry said, "We used to discuss serial killers too, especially Ted Bundy. Tom was fascinated by Bundy. In time, Fry said Dylan became more sadistic. Quote, once we were driving back from Atwood Lake in Carroll County, Tom pulled off to the side of the road, pulled out his gun, and started shooting at this farmer. Apparently, the farmer was a good way off, 200-300 yards. One of the others in the car protested, 'What the hell are you doing?' Dylan explained that he couldn't hit a target that distance with a pistol, so I'm just plinking at him. Quote, I didn't have anything more to do with him. In fact, I'd see him someplace and I didn't even wave to him or talk with him. So this friend had written him off because this dude became so sadistic and becoming more and more dangerous every time they went out. It was now starting to shoot at people randomly from distance, which sounds exactly like the serial killer that they're trying to find.
Absolutely. Man,
This
this
isn't-
guy was just living with this information too. Just
Yeah.
waiting like, oh my God, is somebody going to get killed if I don't come forward with this? And then he saw this write-up and he's like, I have to.
This is an
escalated.
element that I love to cases that we cover sometimes where you get insider knowledge from a person close to the killer as to their thought process and their
Yes.
progression into the crimes that they do. Like this is almost like something you shouldn't get to hear, like a voyeur type of thing, where it's like you get to hear these private conversations between the friend of the killer and the killer and like why he does the things he does. It's interesting
Yeah.
psychology here.
Especially in the formative years. They're talking
Yeah.
about when they were in high school. It's interesting to see
You see
how
him
they're
progress from
developed.
killing a
Yeah.
rat to killing a stray dog to killing domestic dogs to taking shots at farmers. He's seen this whole progression happen.
Yes, and we get to hear it laid out,
Yeah.
from a firsthand perspective. It is pretty awesome. You rarely have that. A lot of these people, they act alone all the time, I think, once they
Yep.
start doing this. They feel like they can't trust people. That's why they go into this anyways.
Yeah. Fry continues. He says, I ran into Dylan again in Newcomers Town in southern Tuscarawas County in about 1986. This was the first I'd spoken to him in a long time. I said, what in the world are you doing clear down here? He said, oh, just driving around, this and that. When I saw him in Newcomers Town, I thought, he's moving further south because he's up to his old ways. They moved to the Ohio Gun Collectors Association gun show up to Cleveland, and I wasn't a member, so Dylan invited me to be his guest. He said he'd stopped killing animals, so I said, I guess we can be friends again.
You promise, Tom.
Right. Pinky
I swear to
promise
God.
you won't shoot any more domestic dogs or shoot
Right.
at farmers anymore.
Oh my God.
He says, I remember one time he and I were driving and he said, quote, do you realize I can go out into the country and find somebody there and there are no witnesses? You can shoot them. There's no motive. Do you realize how easy murder would be to get away with? I said, yeah, but why would you do it? On a trip to the gun show last summer, we were talking about Ted Bundy and how a guy can get away with all that. Tom said, do you think I've ever killed somebody? The question really caught me off guard. I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, that just proves how well you don't know me. The way he
Yikes.
said that to me was really scary. I'd never seen him act like that before. I thought to myself, has anybody been shot? I think you know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Fry.
I think you know that, but I would be thinking like, hey, bro, drop me off at this gas station up here. That's what I'd be thinking.
I'm sure at this point, as much as he said to the police, they're like, I've heard enough. Where the fuck does this guy live?
Yeah, really. But they still have to get something, though.
Yeah.
You know.
So he would go on to say that Dylan lived with his family in Magnolia, about 75 miles from where Jamie Paxton had been murdered. And it didn't take long for them to find ample evidence to support Fry's claims about Thomas Dillon's penchant for killing animals and vandalism. On September 20th, 1992, a witness saw a red Toyota pickup truck similar to Dillon's near the spot where a dog had been killed in Tuscarawas County. A .25 caliber slug was removed from the animal's body. Fry confirmed that Dylan owned a .25 caliber rifle, and Detectives Wilson's request bought it from Dylan. Days later, a ballistic match was made. So now they're using this informant to gain a weapon from the killer that had been used in killing of random animals.
Right.
And they're able to make a match. So now they got something to work with. They still don't have evidence that connects him to an actual murder of a human, but
Right. It's a
when
start.
Wilson ran a check on Dylan's history of firearms purchases, he learned that Dylan had bought numerous weapons from licensed federal firearms dealers. The dealers' records showed that Dylan had bought at least 18 weapons in the last few years, including 2 Mausers of the kind that was used to kill 4 of the 5 outdoorsmen. So now they know he's got the type of weapon that's been used in these crimes.
Yep.
Detective Wilson dug deeper into Dylan's past, beginning with his employment records. His 22-year record at the water department where he worked was good, but his criminal record was more interesting. In 1969, while still a student at Ohio State University, he had been investigated for possessing a Russian mortar military weapon.
Oh shit.
My God, what would you have? Like, what would you need that for?
What?
You know?
Yeah. What do you need that for, dude? Where'd you get it from?
Fucking mortar. Like, that's not even something you can go out and just like see. People go, what would you need an AR-15 for? Whatever. Like, there's people that just really truly enjoy shooting things like that. I understand it. Also, you
Yeah.
don't really need it, but it's like, but I want it. But the mortar thing, because at least the AR, you can go out to like a gun range and you can shoot it.
Right.
I'm not sure there's any places you can go shoot a Russian mortar military weapon.
I don't
where
think
it's legal.
so.
I don't know.
I don't think
be
so.
wrong.
But if anybody would have it, yeah, it would definitely be Dylan. Probably some war vet brought it back. Lived in like rural Ohio. He bought it from him
Yeah.
at a gun show or some shit. Stinking flea
Yeah.
market.
So authorities did not press charges, citing that the mortar was more of a collector's item than a weapon. A second, more recent and illuminating incident had occurred in August of 1991. Dylan had been cited by a game warden for illegal target practice near a state hunting area in southern Stark County. In a search of his pickup truck, the warden had seized a .22 caliber pistol with a silencer. Dylan later pleaded guilty to possessing an illegal silencer and was released on bond on condition that he not possess any firearms. He was awaiting trial or awaiting final sentencing for that. The more
Yeah.
the task force dug into Dylan's past, the more likely a suspect he became. The task force began tallying Dylan began tailing him from the air and ground on mid-October 1992, and they just witnessed him doing all the things you would expect him to be doing, just driving
he's still
around
doing
rural
it.
roads, shooting at shit. During their
Yep.
surveillance, officers followed Dylan on a weekend jaunt of 75 to 125 miles over county roads in Belmont, Harrison, Tuscarawas, Holmes, Costin, and Carroll counties. He often stopped for a beer and would sometimes be drinking as early as 7:15 in the morning. On November 8th, 1992, they got to witness an example of his vandalism firsthand. He went on a shooting spree targeting electric meters, oil well pumps, and stop signs. He also stopped next to a car with a for sale sign on it, picked up a large rock, and threw it through the windshield. Jesus Christ.
He's just doing
Just
some
a one-man
teenage shit,
destruction
bro.
crew.
This is some bullshit high school angst shit right here. What the
know,
fuck?
right? It's
Who's still
incredible.
doing this? That's crazy that he's still doing this as a grown man with a family,
Right.
right? It's almost like he stopped maturing, or the impulse control part of his brain just stopped maturing
Yeah,
at
you may-
like a high school age. Maybe he had some head trauma that we don't know about.
I was going to say, we're going to go through his background more extensively in a few minutes, but I don't recall there being any instances that were reported of head trauma, but it makes you wonder because he sure seems to have zero impulse control.
Yes, I agree 100%.
So task force members lost Dylan on his way home from Belmont County and on November 11th, 1992, but later that day, investigators discovered that numerous cows had been killed with a crossbow in Tuscarawas County. At this point, they have to go, dude, we got to arrest this motherfucker because we lost track of him, and he
Yeah.
easily could have killed more people. Luckily, he only killed some farm animals, but still, like, more lives were lost because you didn't track him well enough. Authorities had been informed that Dylan sometimes used a crossbow, and of course, they assumed that was him that had killed those cows. So Richard Fry helped obtain several of Dylan's arrows, and they were the same model and style as the arrows recovered from the dead cows. They would follow him still to a gun show in New Philadelphia on November 21st, 1992, where he bought a .22 caliber rifle. The purchase of the gun was enough to arrest Dylan for violating his bond on the silencer charge, but there was still nothing linking him to the killings of the outdoorsmen. Investigators faced a tough decision. By waiting to arrest him, they risked losing him and giving him a chance to kill again. And Ohio's deer season would open on November 30th, 1992, drawing more than 300,000 hunters into the woods.
Oh, no.
So they decided not to take the gamble, I think wisely. Because
Very wisely.
They would have, for sure, allowed someone else to be killed. So they arrested him outside of Tuscarawas County, outside of a convenience store on November 27th, 1992, hoping that a search of his home would reveal some other damning evidence. Unfortunately, and I found this incredible, they didn't find anything initially. They searched his house, his Toyota pickup truck, camper, office,
What would
and
they
safety
find? I mean, there's nothing to find.
weapons from the murders, I would think.
He's going to these gun shows frequently and changing these weapons out.
Swapping
He's-
out the guns.
Yes, he's selling and swapping and trading guns. I bet he rarely keeps a gun that he committed a
Yeah.
murder
He probably
with
kills
for
a
day.
person, then gets rid of that gun before the next one, right? And doesn't hold on to
Absolutely.
it for very long.
Absolutely. I think that's what he's doing. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, so they search all these things and they turn up nothing. 5 days later, at his bond hearing, prosecutors revealed that Dillon was the prime suspect in 5 killings. And the barrage of publicity that followed the Dillon's arrest finally gave the task force the break they needed. On December 4th, 1992, a Stark County man came forward and told investigators that he had bought a 6.5 by 55 millimeter Swedish Mauser rifle from Dillon at a Mazzillion gun show on April 6th. So I think you're 100% spot on. He kills a person with a gun, then he takes it to a gun show and swaps it out for another one.
Yep.
The man turned in the rifle and receipt over to investigators. Ballistic tests matched the bullets recovered from Gary Bradley's gun and from Gary Bradley and Claude Hawkins with the rifle. So the 2 victims that had been killed with that Mauser, the ballistics matched the gun that he had in his possession prior to selling it.
Right.
And on January 22nd, 1993, a Noble County grand jury indicted Dillon on 2 counts of aggravated murder with death penalty specifications, and his bond was set at $1 million. So they got him now. They at least got him for 2 of the murders. Noble County prosecutor Lucian Young wanted to seek indictments on all 5 slayings, but because of publicity about Dillon, he went ahead with 2, planning to file other charges at a later date. Officials at the Stark County Jail placed Dillon on homicide watch after 2 strips of blanket were found in his cell. One of the strips had reportedly been fashioned into a noose, and he claimed that the strips were used to cover his eyes while he slept. Shortly after that incident, Dillon told a mental health counselor that he would, quote, strangle inmates if he had the chance, and he wouldn't shed a tear. So
That's bullshit. He's just trying to get in solitary. Because
that's all it is, right?
when he was getting
100%.
arrested,
There's no way he's going to commit that sort of like personal murder like that with his bare hands. He's a coward that
no.
shoots from a distance at people.
he'll get fucked up. He tried to strangle
Right.
somebody in prison.
Right.
He just wants to get in solitary because
That's all it is.
he threw a fit when he was after he got convicted about going to like the most what do you call it, the highest security prison in Ohio.
That's what it was, dude. That was the most gangster move on
Yeah.
On Jean Hawkins, the mother
Yeah.
of one of the victims. She ensures, she gets a giant petition. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But she ensures that he goes to the maximum security prison, the most dangerous
Good.
one.
That's what he
So
deserves.
awesome.
Yep. You want to
Let's
be a
go through-
hunter? Here's a hunting ground for you.
That's right. Yep. Now you're in with some real beasts.
That's right.
So let's go through Thomas Lee Dillon's background here real quick. He was born in Canton, Ohio on July 9th, 1950, and shares a birthday with Tom Hanks, O.J. Simpson, and Fred Savage.
Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
I'm a big Wonder Years fan, so I'm a Fred Savage fan.
Fred Savage, the portrait of innocence, childhood innocence, and then you have O.J. Simpson, born the same day. Crazy, right?
Right. And then you have one of the greatest actors ever in Tom Hanks.
Oh, Tom Hanks. That's right. Who else can
Yep.
pull off something
Man,
like
in some of the most
Castaway?
iconic films of our time.
Yes, absolutely. That's inarguable. I remember my mom showing me the movie Big when I was a kid, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Because it's like every kid's dream. It's like, if I look like an adult, I could do whatever the hell I want.
Right.
Have you seen that movie, Tom Hanks?
It's been so long. Yeah, I think I saw
Yeah.
it when I was a kid.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was my first introduction to Tom Hanks.
But man, the scope of films that he's done, like the different parts that like he's really got range, as an actor.
absolutely.
He's done it all.
He really has. He's done comedies. He's
Been
done
a war
shit
hero.
like Castaway,
He's been Forrest
Da Vinci
Gump.
Code.
He's been, you name it. He's done it.
Yeah, Saving Private Ryan. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's done
Freaking Castaway. Fantastic.
it. Yep.
So Thomas Lee Dillon, born in 1950, his father succumbed to Hodgkin's disease and died when he was 15 months old. A psychologist, Jeffrey Smalden, said that Dillon viewed his mother as a cold woman who never praised or punished him. Common thread with serial killers, right? Male serial killers, their mother being very cold, and their father not being in their lives. So
So she
kinda
never
creates this.
praised him, but she also didn't punish him. So she was
That's
just
almost
not there.
worse.
That's worse.
It's almost worse, right? The lack of
That is
attention
worse.
all around.
You're right. That's just being cold, almost like you're an inconvenience.
Yep.
You're right. That is worse because
Quote, Dylan-
at least they punish you. They care something about the way you're acting.
Yeah. The psychologist continued, quote, Dillon has no memories of his mother ever hugging him, kissing him, or telling him she loved him. Classmates from Glenwood High School in Plain Township remembered Dillon as an extremely intelligent person, but a loner. In his 1968 senior yearbook, it listed him as having no extracurricular activities.
Shocker.
A classmate named Ronald Skelton said, quote, he was a person who marched to the beat of a different drum,
Yeah.
separated from the mainstream. His
Well, his
friends
school
remembered.
didn't offer arson classes, so He had to do
Right.
his shit after school.
Yeah. Got to get it in somehow.
That's right. That's right.
Dylan loved to hunt. He simply liked to kill and enjoyed watching animals suffer. As a teenager, he began to count the number of animals that he had killed on a calendar in his bedroom.
Now
That's a little
when you start to
alarming.
worry. Yeah.
If you find a calendar with a kill count on it in your kid's bedroom, you might
Might
want to
be-
take him to therapy.
You might want to intervene right here.
Yeah.
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 Now's the time. No doubt. Maybe a little past the time, but you should intervene. But an absent mother who didn't give a shit probably don't even know this is going on.
She didn't
or
even.
what-
She was completely unaware of the calendar, I'm
Right.
sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Following high school, Dylan attended Kent State University's Stark campus and later Ohio State University. Quote, in the summer months, we would all hang out at Willow Springs swimming pool on 55th Street, said a man who remembers Dylan. I just ran around with him a couple years. We all drank together. I never saw him shoot a gun, but I heard other people talking about him. Crazy Dylan went out drinking and he was shooting a pistol at this window, or he shot the windows out of a school. I heard things like that a couple of times. Thomas Dylan would go on to graduate from Ohio State in 1972 and went to work as a draftsman for the Canton Water Department. In 1978, he married Catherine Elsis, a nurse from Alliance, Ohio. Were you kind of surprised that he got a degree? And
I am. From
Got
the
kind of a
Ohio
prestigious job.
State. From the Ohio State.
everybody said he was very intelligent, as are many of the serial killers we've covered.
That's true. That is very true. That's how they know to cover their tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, so as I briefly mentioned, in 1978, he married a woman, Catherine Elsis, who was a nurse from Ohio. By the early 1980s, he began boasting to friends that the count of his death calendar had reached 500. He had also attended Ohio's peace officers training in Lawrence Township in Stark County, where he graduated with expert marksmanship. Of course, he's a peace officer, right?
Right.
It's such a common theme. Like you see, he's very BTK-esque, where he's got a family at home. He's living this normal life,
He
but
is.
also he wants to be like an authority figure while simultaneously committing random acts of violence and arson and shit like that.
Right. Yeah. He wants to be respected, but also be impulsive and do what the hell he wants.
It's like if Dwight from The Office was evil, instead of
Yes.
just a dork.
Right. Yeah. And then like this undeserved confidence, I guess, as well. He has. You know what I'm saying? Become an expert marksmanship. In the peace officers? You know what I'm saying? It's not like it's,
Yeah, right.
It's not like you're an Army Ranger or anything. I don't know. But I'm sure he wore this as a badge of honor, and that's just what he needed to boost his confidence with a firearm. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. The irony of being called something like a peace officer while having a kill count calendar with 500 marks on it.
Right? Yeah. It's a little bit of an oxymoron there.
Break time. But don't worry, it's not all ads, baby. We also got a great podcast recommendation, Wife of Crime. Check it out.
Hey everyone, my name is Jess, and I'm the co-host of a weekly true crime podcast called Wife of Crime. Every week, I tell my husband one of my favorite true crime stories, and he reacts to them. Sometimes I get mad at him. You're gonna really regret all of this judginess that you're doing right now once I tell you this story, because you're being very judgmental.
Obviously, something bad's gonna happen. She's making a lot of bad decisions.
Well, you're being very judgmental. Stop. And sometimes he makes really weird noises.
Oh!
He now thinks that he's an FBI profiler. Yeah.
How about that? Rust the profile, a placebo effect.
But most of the time, he just has really funny color commentary.
Wow, so he's sitting in his human leather chair, eating fruity pebbles out of a skull.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts and check us out on Instagram at Wife of Crime Pod.
What's up, creepers? Let me tell you about today's sponsor, Noom. Making the world a healthier place. It's like having a trainer, a nutritionist, and a health coach with you at all times. Noom is unlike anything you've tried. They use a psychology-based approach. Instead of strict rules, they empower you with the knowledge to build smarter, more sustainable habits. Noom helps to reshape your relationship with eating, often asking you not just what you're eating, but why you're eating it. Everybody's journey is different, so Noom customizes a program for you based on your personal goals. I've been using the app for a few weeks now, and I noticed a big change in my behavior. Every day, just checking in with my Noom professional and having my goals set that I look at that's a big part of life, just having goals set and written down that you look at. And, you track your weight on there, you track your diet, you think about why you're doing the things you're doing, and it starts to change your behaviors. It's nourishing instead of restrictive. One beautiful thing about Noom is that no food is totally off limits. I can't stand the idea of diets that say you'll never eat said thing again, something that you love. Noom allows you to still continue to eat the things you love while learning to maintain a healthier balance with these things. Also, an off day here or there is okay and won't set you off course. Noom will gently get you back on track. The app only asks for about 10 minutes of your day to teach you about your eating habits and check in on your progress. Noom's entire platform is built upon two things: research and wanting to help people lead healthier lives through behavioral change. Their team of behavioral health experts have PhDs and master's degrees in fields including psychology, integrative medicine, and neuroscience. But even though they're all about evidence-based science, they're also passionate about creating a more empathetic approach to creating a healthier life. So sign up today for your trial and get psychology-based support and motivation to reach your goals at Noom.com/creeper. Once again, sign up for your trial at Noom.com/creeper. It's never too late to get started toward a healthier life. What's up, creepers? Let me tell you about one of our favorite sponsors, SimpliSafe. When SimpliSafe Home Security's founders, Chad and Eleanor Lawrence, designed their first security system in their kitchen, they did it for a very personal reason. Their friends had just had their home broken into. They were struggling to find a security system that was simple to set up and would make them feel safe again. Making people feel safe is what SimpliSafe has been doing ever since that moment 15 years ago. And I can say from experience, I've had my home broken into, my first home that I ever owned, and it was a terrible feeling. In the home I'm currently living in, I set up my own SimpliSafe security system